This is KFUG Crescent City. I'm Mike Thornton. This is Public Process. We are joined in the studio by Mike Tompkins of True North's local organizing committee. He's been addressing homelessness here in Del Norte for, I guess, about a year and a half or so now. And we're also joined by Jesse Finkenkeller. Did I get it right?
Yes.
All right. We had an agreement that if I blew it, Jesse was going to correct me as would need be done. So let's start with Mike if we can. And so I'm going to ask you to both kind of get close to the mic. We got a lot of mics, you know. We got a Mike Thornton, we got a Mike Tompkins, we got a Mike Justice, we got a microphone. There's a lot of mics going on around here. But Mike, let's see if we can. We've just talked with Mike Justice about Our Daily Bread and also about him and his sort of journey to getting to where he's been engaged with Our Daily Bread now for quite some time. Let's talk, if we can, about True North's local organizing committee on homelessness, what's been done with that, what's being done, and then we can also talk about where things might be going, at least from your perspective. So please, if you will.
Well, thank you, Mike. I really appreciate a chance to talk about this because I'm really kind of excited about not only where we've been, but where I'm hoping we're going. And so where we started a year ago, last, I think, November-ish or so, a small group of people who are just people who've been involved in local congregations, church congregations, and health organizations where they're having to deal with the homeless population on a regular basis in ways that really made us realize how desperate the need was to change the way things work for those people and change and bring some kind of solutions to this community. And so it was like 5 or 6 people, and we worked and we did research and we talked to all the other people involved, and finally we're able to bring together a resolution, what was the term that we used for this statement of principles, saying that homeless people are people of dignity and value and worth. And we got the Board of Supervisors and the City Council to unanimously sign on to this and say, yes, we believe that, and we're going to work to address those needs in a humane and dignified way. And so we managed to bring that to pass. We actually organized what we called a super, help me remember the coalition.
Yeah, a coalition.
Thank you.
Coalition of community stakeholders.
A coalition of community stakeholders and leaders, elected officials and otherwise, to sit together and begin to address it. And once we had done that, we realized that's not going to work. It didn't work out the way we planned, and so we learned a lot. In that session, we realized, okay, we've been approaching this from the wrong direction, and so we backed away. We sent a letter to the editors of the newspaper, and we sent a notice to those folks that, you know what, that didn't work, so we're going to back away and we're going to approach it differently. And so where we are right now is we've decided that one of the main problems that we need to address is the way the community perceives those less fortunate folk in our community. Thank you for supplying me with that, Jesse. That was a good way of saying it. Jesse made it clear to us that, saying the homeless makes it look like, it's got baggage. That word has baggage.
That's a really important point.
Yes.
Yeah, and so Jesse, thank you for that. Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Well, I personally have been homeless, and I know how it is to be categorized as homeless. I'm not going to say that I wasn't doing drugs and all that, but not everybody out there is doing drugs. And not everybody out there is there on their own choice. It's society sometimes just puts us in that category, and we don't need to be in that category. And I recently went back to the drugs and all that, and now I'm back, and I've been off for almost 6 months now, thanks to Our Daily Bread, Mike, Justice, his wife, Rachel, Charles, and Sandra, and all the rest of the members of the Our Daily Bread. They showed me the way to God and let Him put into my heart and change a whole outlook of everything in life. With God, we can do anything. Without Him, we can't.
Jesse, I'm sorry. I apologize for cutting you off, but let me ask you, because I think you raised a really important issue, and that's this issue of labeling an entire group of people as the homeless.
Yes.
You know, can you talk more about that? Because, I mean, I think like Mike and myself, you know, you and I may have some similar kinds of history. But that's not everybody that's homeless.
Well,
So talk about that, if you will.
my history, okay, I've got 38 years in prison, and I've had 5 years of IV using, you know, and I was categorized as the homeless too. And it's, you know, when you say homeless, you see somebody that's filthy, dirty, and has no dignity, has no pride in himself, you know. And when you put a person in that category, it's doesn't nothing but stomping on him and putting him down. When we need to pick these people up and show them a reason to live, you know. And like I said, a lot of them are caught in a rut that they can't get out of, and they don't know how to ask for help. And if they do ask for help, it's, well, you're homeless. Yeah, that's where it's at.
Yeah, and you know that. So I recently wrote a letter to the paper about something I think that you've just touched on. So I want to be clear. I and other people that I know participated in the point in time count that happened relating to attempting to assign to find out how many people, quote unquote, are homeless in the community. And I had some tremendously positive interactions with social service staff, you know, very, very positive. And I recently retired. And because I don't make a lot of money, I called Covered California and I said, yeah, hey, you know, like I have to take expensive medication. I'm really scared of that. What do I do? And they said, well, here's what you do. Go to your local social services department and see if you can apply for Medi-Cal as a supplement for your Medicare, right? So I said, okay, I'll do that. So I walked in and I was treated like a non-entity, like a non-person. The person at the desk, I mean, wouldn't even look at me while they were speaking to me, and just sort of treated me like, you know, who are you and why am I having to waste my time like even dealing with you? And handed me a big thick booklet and said, here, go fill this out, and here are the hours you can drop it off. And I left there, you know, saying to myself, you know, I have resources. You know, I am not broke. I have a place to live. I have friends. I have people who can help me with things that I can't do. And so I'm very, very fortunate. What about all the people who are living on the edge, who are barely getting by, who are desperate, who are sick, who are mentally ill, who don't have anywhere to go, who don't have any of those advantages or resources? And as I said in my letter, I actually can understand why someone would walk in there, get treated that way, walk out of that office and look for the nearest bottle of cheap wine they could find and fall back in the bushes and give up. You know, and the reason I bring that up is that I hear many times people saying, well, there's help available. Why don't they just take it? Well, I can see why somebody wouldn't want to go in there and get treated like that again. I mean, I can understand that. And I think that's something that really needs to be said. It's one thing to say that there's help available. It's another thing to recognize that you're dealing with complex human beings who have histories, who have different levels of ability to cope and all of that stuff. And understanding that if you genuinely want to provide assistance, you need to take all of that stuff into account and not just look at them and say, oh, they must be poor and they must be homeless.
The one thing they need to look at is the fact that they too could be on the same boat. You know, they could, anytime their job could be failed, they could lose their job, they could lose everything, and they're on that side. Think about that. Next time you see a homeless, say, hey, you know what, that could be me. And treat people like you want to be treated.
Well, the vast majority of people are 2 paychecks away from being homeless themselves, or one serious illness, or any number of things, and could find themselves, as you correctly point out, in that very position.
Yeah.
So, Mike, I have a story. I will leave the name out for
Okay.
obvious reasons, but it's a story that Jess probably knows of a man who.
And you get musical accompaniment too.
Hey.
Before you do that, let me just say we're
Yeah, that's
speaking now with Mike Tompkins of True North's Homelessness Local Organizing Committee, and Jesse Finkenkeller, who's also joining us today and is involved with Our Daily Bread and involved with this as well. Thank you both for being with us on the program today. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. So this is a story of a gentleman who had a really good job back east. He was a tech expert with a large corporation, had good insurance, had a good job, good income, had a good life. Then he had a heart attack. Boom. All of that just went poof. And the insurance wasn't adequate. The safety net totally failed him, and he is now here in Del Norte County, living in his car and waiting. As the doctors tell him, it could happen any day, dude, you're gone. Your heart's that bad. And so he's congestive heart failure. So he just kind of like, yes, it can happen to anybody.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. I think that a lot of, so here's one of my kind of theories on all of this, and I'll ask you what you think. So I think a lot of the animosity that we see from people, and not just in this community, in many communities, towards people who are poor, towards people who are marginalized, towards people who are homeless, is really based on fear. And it's fear that, well, if they're like me, well, then that could happen to me too. So I have to create a scenario that makes them different, because then if they're different, then well, that can't happen to me. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. You know, it's like, well, the problem's not mine, so why do I really want to worry about it?
Right. Well, and if I can say, well, you know, they're all this or they're all that, or
category them.
Yeah. Yes, to categorize them so they're not me. Then that way I don't have to be afraid that could happen to me as well.
It doesn't make a difference how you categorize a person. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. No matter how rich you are or not, you could be on the same side.
That's right, and it's something that's important for us all to remember. My name's Mike Thornton. You're listening to Public Process on KFUG, Crescent City, California. So, Mike Tompkins, we talked a little bit about the work that True North did. I realize, because I take it for granted, that everybody knows who True North is. You know? So maybe you could give us just a little bit of a description of True North and what it is and what it does and why it does it.
Thank you, Mike. Obviously, you could do an even better job than I can, but because I'm your guest, I will take a stab at it. So True North is a community organizing group of people who are doing work based on the PICO model, and the PICO model is PICO, People Improving Community Through Organizing. It's actually an international organization, but strongest in the United States. And the idea is to organize the people who are feeling the pain. And in the case of the homelessness LOC, it's the homeless people. So the idea is that we go out into the streets, we find those homeless people. In this case, we actually found a large number of people right at Our Daily Bread because it's such a well-known shelter. And so we went to those people and we said, what do you need? And so the idea is to bring them in, teach them how to organize and work for the things that they need in this community, for the solutions because nobody knows better what they need than they do, right? And so the idea of True North is to go to those people who are feeling the pain. In the homelessness case, it's the homeless folks, that less fortunate. But there are other. The school district, the parents who have children in school are being organized to help solve the problems that their children face in school. That's the idea.
Well, and based on the premise that the lived experience of people, they're, as you said, they're dealing with these things every day. They know what the real situations are. They know what helps, what doesn't help, what works, and what doesn't work. And it certainly doesn't mean that just because you're in it, you have all the answers, but you certainly have a perspective that people who are not dealing with it on a daily basis have. So you have a different way of looking at it and need to be part of crafting the solutions. So you were talking about the efforts that the organizing committee did in passing the resolutions with the city and the county. I am no longer involved with True North. I was at that time. And so I do know some of what happened with that. A big part of the resolutions were that people who find themselves homeless are not homeless people. They are people who happen to be homeless, multifaceted reasons why they may be in that position, and that everyone needs to be treated with a basic status of human dignity and intrinsic worth, and then that it's a community-wide effort in order to actually address the systemic causes and solutions to homelessness. That's kind of where we left off with you, Mike. Can you talk about what's happening now, and then what True North is looking to do moving forward in the short, middle, and long terms?
Sure. And thanks for the opportunity to do that, because I think the community needs to know what's going on here. We've got several different approaches, all of which are the purpose is to change the perceptions of the community towards those folks in our community that they see out there on the streets. So we're hoping to get stories like Jesse's out there, so that folks have heard the actual stories of the actual people that they're seeing, so that they realize these are real people who aren't necessarily, this isn't a failure of character, this isn't a failure of personality, this is just stories of real people having real difficulty and hard luck and finding their way through, and they need that, the help that we can give them. So I, as an ally of those people, can better help them if I know their stories. And so we're going to do that. That's one of the things. We're going to use radio, what we're doing right now. We're going to use the newspaper. We're going to use every opportunity, the internet, whatever opportunities we can to get stories out there, real stories of real people, and so that we can attack that fear that holds us locked into this bad perception. And so there's that. And we also know that there are communities. For instance, there's a thing called Hope Village in Medford. It's been going for 2 years now, about 2 years, and it's successful. It's working, and it's bringing people in who want to be inside. And so we're going to go visit them. We've started talking to them. We're trying to set a date right now for a tour with a person who can tell us how they got there, how they broke down those barriers, and there will be just as strong a barriers that they had to break down in that area as we do. And
Well, no, I just was going to say, for people who don't know what Hope Village is, what are we talking about here?
Okay, it's a tiny house village where you give people a physical building, a small, tiny building that can be locked so that their belongings are safe. They can walk away from it, they can lock it up and walk away and know that it'll still be there when they come back. And the idea is to create a small village of those kinds of places, and it's transitional. The idea is that they don't stay there. They come in, they get themselves organized, they get some kind of, help with all the different details that they have to get into permanent housing, to get into affordable housing that they can live in sustainably. And so it's a transitional situation where they can be safe and they can get all of the different kinds of help that the county can offer, and move from there as possible into a more sustainable life in the community.
So the premise is, and I mean, I think I already know the answer to this, but please chime in if you'd like, and that is that when you're out on the street, when you are, kind of that far down the rung of the ladder, it's really difficult to get your stuff together, and to do all of these things unless you have somewhere where you can be safe and stable and store your meager belongings and all of that. That's what we're really talking about here, right?
Exactly.
Yes, we are. It's a dog-eat-dog world out there. I know everybody thinks it's real cool. It's not cool. They steal from you. There's things that happen out there that shouldn't be happening, and where you can get a nice shower, that builds a person up.
Yeah.
When you clean, you have clean clothes and you have a clean place to live. That's just a little bit up the ladder, But when you start putting dignity and good meals and God into their life, you get up that ladder pretty quick.
Well, and one of the things that one of the things that people are really upset about in this community is people taking shopping carts, right? And I get it. I mean, I understand, like some grocery store has shopping carts and they're going, man, people are taking our shopping carts. Yeah, I would be unhappy about that too. And why are people taking the shopping carts? They're not taking shopping carts because shopping carts are cool. They're not taking shopping carts because they're trying to sell them. They're taking shopping carts because it's the only way they can haul their belongings with them so they don't get stolen, right?
That's very true.
So, Mike, let's talk, if we can, about Hope Village is one. There was the coalition work that was done. That was premature.
Mm-hmm.
Changing the narrative, developing empathy. You talked a little bit about doing that. Talk more, if you will, about what that's going to look like, or what the group hopes it will look like.
Well, let me give an example of what's going on right now. The Methodist Church under Dana Gilport and the Episcopal Church are working together. We're doing a Tuesday 11 to 1 o'clock shower opportunity, and it's being well attended for the same reasons that Jesse just said, because being clean is part of being dignified, and so what's happening is in that program, a lot of the people who are coming from the Methodist congregation, they're doing a lot of people coming from that congregation doing hard work, and they're stepping out of their comfort zone to do this. And they've never really interacted with these people before, and they're learning from that experience the stories and learning to see that these aren't scary people. These are just unfortunate people. And so that's part of how we're changing that culture. And it's a powerful way to do it because they get to interact with them on a one-to-one basis. They get to see who they are, what they're dealing with, and they get to, when you're face to face with that and you hear the stories, it changes you the way you feel and think about it. And so we need more of that.
Well, and I get that, and I guess my question. Let me
Sure.
phrase this the way I want to phrase it. First, let me say that you're tuned to KFUG. This is Public Process. I'm Mike Thornton. We've been addressing homelessness throughout the program today, and we're talking now with Jesse Finkenkeller and Mike Tompkins, True North Local Organizing Committee, talking about homelessness and work that's being done on that now. So Mike, here's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that by people learning about, individual stories, learning that people are not categories, they're not stereotypes, they're human beings. And so there's a bridge that's built there, and that's a bridge of empathy. And it's like, okay, I now perhaps have some sort of an idea of what it feels like to be walking in your shoes. And I guess my question is, well, so what? Okay, great. You know what? I no longer think of you as X. Well, but what good does that do? I mean, does that, I guess what I'm saying is, outside of some sort of social, emotional, I know this is not really the way I want to say it, feel good connection, how does that change anything? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yes, I do, and that is certainly the. It almost feels like a wall to this little LOC of people. We've run up against the elected officials who are determined to control this, and I don't want to get into a situation where I'm saying we got elected officials who are trying to keep the homelessness down. And one of the things that probably should be brought out here, and I don't have much information about this yet, but I've been informed that the county supervisor, there's 2 county supervisors and 2 city council members who do what they call a 2x2, and they've been working on this homelessness issue for a long time. Mm-hmm. And they're about to roll out their plan, and I believe it's the 14th of April that they plan on doing this. And when they do, we're going to learn what they've been working on and what their idea of solutions is. And so I'm looking forward to that. I'm grateful that they've actually reached out through the city council to True North and asked us to be part of what they're doing. So I'm grateful for that. I think that's a great thing. So with that in mind, we're about to find out. And I also know that there is a town hall coming up with Mike McGuire, and who is going to talk to us about some money he's bringing into the county that is intended specifically for the affordable housing issues that we're experiencing that are the basic reason for the homelessness issues. So we've got some things happening very soon that look very promising. We just don't know exactly what it looks like. I'm going to take an opportunity to say one thing here, and I hope Mike stop me if I get into hot water here, but I really wish that when we first invited the county supervisors who were working on homelessness at the time, when we invited them to talk to us in our little LOC, I wish they had been more forthcoming with what they were doing at the time, and they weren't. And so I'm saying to them now, if you're listening, if you hear this, we're glad that you're inviting us in. I think you are, and we're glad you are. I wish you had been more forthcoming at the beginning. I think we could have done a much better job of this if you had.
Well, and I think that goes to several issues, if I'm hearing what you're saying. So I think it's several things. One is the empathy piece of it is that if people, just regular folks, see other folks as human beings, they're more likely to support activities and programs and efforts in the community in order to help address the needs of the people that they now don't see as a stereotype, but as another human being. So there's that. It sounds like the elected officials, I mean, I'm really gratified to hear that they've done some outreach. I think that's wonderful. I happened to be at the Economic Summit last Friday, and Mike McGuire did make an announcement. I'm not 100% positive that this is exactly it, but basically saying that there was going to be a town hall coming up. I do believe it's April 18th, that there is several $100,000 of money. Some of that is going to be earmarked for people who are deemed chronically homeless, and that's in many ways another way of saying chronically mentally ill, and who need a certain type of supportive housing and ongoing assistance. But then apparently there's other money as well, which may or may not, might be for different things. And this is just my rap, right? It's like, there's a couple of things. So one is for me, and I said this to somebody the other day, in one way or another, I've been working with the poor, the marginalized, the disenfranchised for 30-something years. And so my first question is, how does anything that is being proposed, how is it actually going to affect the people that it's supposed to be affecting, and what role do they have in helping to create the solutions? And I think those things are really important. And that leads to this, which I think I'm hearing you say. Transparency is always important. And I say this in other things to other folks as well. It's like, yes, it's hard. And people who know that. They know it's hard. And if you would just be transparent about what you're doing, I think the thing is, oh my God, well, we'll be attacked. Well, you're already being attacked. So if you're more transparent about what you're actually doing, you'll get support for that, So that's what I'm hearing you say, and that's great. Listen, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back and finish up the program today. But we got a couple of things going on, and we're going to take a quick break. You're tuned to KFUG Crescent City, 101.1 on your radio dial. Oh, a number of reasons to tune in to KFUG Crescent City. I'm Mike Thornton. This is Public Process. You are tuned to KFUG Crescent City, 101.1 on your radio dial, worldwide, on the internet, kfugradio.org. We're joined by Mike Tompkins of True North's local organizing committee addressing homelessness here in our Del Norte community. And Jesse Fingenkeller is also joining us. And while we were off mic, Jesse and I were having a brief conversation that I think is incredibly important. And so, Jesse, some of the stuff that Mike and I were talking about were sort of long-range kinds of plans. And you had something, that was really important. Can you say that again? Please come close to the mic, if you will.
What I was saying was that some of these proposals are like 5 years down the road. And I was saying within 5 years, there could be 400 people dying out there, 500. What we need a solution is now, not later. Now. This is where the problem is now. It's not. Who's to say it'll still be a problem 5 years from now? But we need to work on it now and not give up on it.
Yeah, no, that's really important. I really appreciate you pointing that out because, and I think it sort of gets to that premise of, you know, people closest to the pain, if you will, because those of us who are not experiencing whatever the situation is, it's easy for us to start talking about 3-year solutions and 5-year solutions when in fact we've had 1 or 2 people in our community who happen to be homeless die very recently. We had another gentleman who could have easily been killed when he was in a dumpster that was picked up and dumped into a garbage truck. And so there are people out there now, they are suffering now, and we need to do something now while at the same time not just get caught up in the perpetual now, but also working to come up with some sustainable and systemic solutions that will change the equation moving forward. And really that's the work that Mike and True North are doing.
Exactly. And you know, I mean, what Mike Justice is doing and his people, the people that he's got working with him, like Jesse, that's absolutely necessary. And I happen to know that there are benefactors in this community who have been supporting them with actually large amounts of money. That, I mean, in a way that's making them able to do the things that they're trying to do, and to bring the people inside that need to be inside, the people that are dying from exposure. Don't need to, and so Mike Justice is just one part of the problem, and I'm hoping that we can create even more beds inside and save even more lives. That's absolutely necessary, and that's one approach. That's the now approach. That some people will recognize the term downriver work. It's important work. We don't want to stop it. We want to keep it going and support it. But then there's finding out why the babies are coming down the river in the first place. We've got to stop the babies somewhere. We've got to get that part changed too. So it's a two-pronged problem.
Oh, this is another story that you and I are very familiar with, the babies on the river. Maybe people listening might not know what you're talking about by that. Would you be willing to explain what you meant by that?
I may not do as good a job as you do, but yeah, the idea is that the people live beside the river, and one day somebody notices a basket floating down the river, and they go out and they pull the basket in, and it turns out to be a baby in the basket. So they bring the baby in, and they do all the things that you have to do for a baby that you've just discovered. You feed it, you get it warm, you do all the things that need to be done. And the next day there's 2 baskets coming down the river, so you go out and you get those baskets, and they're going to be babies, so you bring them in, and you little by little, day after day, more and more babies are coming down the river, and you set up systems for helping to take care of all these babies. I mean, you've got to find a home for them, you've got to find a way to feed them all, so you create programs and ways of dealing with it, and then finally somebody says, well, wait a minute. Does anybody know where these babies are coming from? Why are these babies in the river in the first place? And everybody goes, oh, never thought of that. Well, that's upriver work. That's going up the river, finding out where the babies are coming from, and finding a way to keep that from happening in the first place. That's the idea.
Yeah, and there are a lot of different things. I mean, there's dealing with all of that can help people who find themselves homeless to, become not homeless, to get into various types of treatment and services they need. It's also preventing people from becoming homeless in the first place, or to falling into those cracks in society that any one of us can fall into, even though that's not part of the plan. I mean, very rarely is it ever part of anybody's plan. So, Mike, and to the degree you want to weigh in, Jesse, the City Council is meeting this evening at 6 o'clock at the Flynn Center, And on the agenda is, I think, 4 different ordinances, maybe more. I don't remember off the top of my head. And these have been created in many ways to address a situation that has arisen as a result of a federal court ruling in Boise, Idaho, which basically said that if there is no shelter available, you cannot criminalize someone for sleeping and resting on public property. And so as a result of that, one of the things that happened was several people, I don't know how many, actually began sleeping and resting and or camping on some fairly visible pieces of public property. That caused, for some people, a lot of consternation. Folks got upset. One of our county supervisors really went on a bit of a, for the lack of a better word at the moment, a bit of a jihad about it. And so now the city council is going to be addressing these 4 proposed resolutions. I've looked at them briefly. Mike, I think you and True North have looked at them. So what are your thoughts about those? And then what, if anything, are you and others doing about being part of the discussion at City Council this evening?
All right. Yeah, well, the one that concerned us the most at this point is the one that says no sleeping in your vehicle on public streets. That's going to be problematic, and they probably know that, and they probably are prepared to hear this. But what we're going to do is, as people like Jesse and others who are experiencing these issues are going to be there tonight, and they're going to be listening. They're going to be, and when they find that there is something problematic on that agenda, they're going to stand up and say what they think about that. We believe that the people who are feeling the pain need to address the pain, and they need to be heard. And so this is a great opportunity for them. So we're looking forward to that.
Did you have any thoughts, Jesse?
As far as what?
As far as the ordinances.
Yeah, well, some of the ordinances kind of sound like they want to build a fence around somewhere and put people in them. Like we're animals. We're not animals. We're people. And you got to start treating them with dignity and start treating them like we are humans. We're all God's children. And that's the worst thing you could do is category a person like that. More things need to be said about picking people up and not kicking them. And I had made a suggestion about all these army bases that have been vacated. You know, there's no more military there. There's good housing right there. I don't see why that can't be used.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of potential, and this is how Jesse and I got into the thing of what needs to happen now versus what needs to happen later. Because we can talk about proposed, we can talk about potential, and then there's the right now aspect of it. But I guess for me, and once again, this is my just cursory looking at the ordinances, one of them is a leash law for dogs. Mm-hmm. On the face of it, that seems reasonable to me. Another one has to do with putting some sort of time limits on where people can actually camp on public grounds, and then having a designated area. What does that actually mean? That's another one. There's the one about people sleeping in their cars. And then there was one, which I didn't quite get, about not letting people sleep in their own RVs on their own private property for more than 7 days at a time. I'm not quite sure how that plays into this, but anyway, I think those were basically the proposed ordinances. I know for a fact that the ACLU is looking at these ordinances as well. not just about how they're crafted and whether or not they're legal, but also then there will be the issue of how they're enforced and whether or not they are enforced equitably. One of the things that I know and I believe about our police chief, Ivan Minsel, is he is a proponent of enforcing the laws equally regardless of your socioeconomic status. So for me, I mean, I think the thing with the ordinance is, okay, you want to do these ordinances. What does it really mean? How is it going to be enforced? And what role does this play in actually trying to address homelessness in our community? Is it something that's going to be helping to lead towards a solution? Or is it simply a way of pushing people back into the woods and into the bushes because they had the temerity to actually be homeless in public? Does that make sense?
Absolutely, and I can see the city's position. I can see that that they're being faced with what for them is almost an intractable problem.
Yes,
I understand that, and I don't believe I have any absolutely perfect solution. And I believe what they're trying to do is just find the legal and right way through this. It's a very legalistic situation. So I understand that. At the same time, finding a way to do this that finds solutions for both the unfortunate people on the street and their constituents, the business people,
yes,
all of those. That's hard to do. And so I'm hoping that what we see tonight and our conversation that we have tonight is on that basis, that we're both looking for solutions that work for everybody, not just for the business people, not just for their lawyers, not just, that's what I'm hoping for.
well, and that makes perfect sense because, I mean, let's face it, Crescent City, its future, its existence almost, I mean, ag, of course, but tourism. And I know at the Economic Summit, there was a lot of emphasis on creating sort of a high-end kind of tourist town and tourist experience. And it's difficult to do that if you have a lot of poor people, on the streets. But you can't, the answer to that isn't push them into the woods. The answer to that is let's find some way of dealing with the problem. And it's an incredibly intractable problem. It's really hard. Nobody has the silver bullet answer. And so hopefully what's happening tonight will be one part of coming up with a systemic set of solutions that will address as much of the problems as possible. Gentlemen, we just have a couple of moments left. Any final thoughts? First, Mike Tompkins, and then we'll go to Jesse.
So one thing that just popped in my head, the HUD program is under the city auspices. City runs, the HUD person is hired by the city. Are they working with HUD to find ways to make it easier for people to get in housing? Are they working with them, or are they just saying, that's your deal, you deal with it?
Jesse Finkenkeller.
Yes. What I'm a firm believer is, you just can't push us out of sight and forget us. If we come up and start talking and expressing our opinions, we can make this work. So I challenge everyone out there less fortunate to come and voice their opinions. I'm all the time down at Our Daily Bread. Bring your notes with me. I will push them for you.
That's tonight.
God loves you, and I love you guys.
That's tonight at the Crescent City City Council at 6 p.m. Gentlemen, thank you both for being with us on Public Process today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having us.
All right. Okay, that's Public Process for today. I'm Mike Thornton, and of course, as always, you are tuned to KFUG, Crescent City, 101.1 on your radio dial, worldwide on the internet, kfugradio.org. Stay tuned throughout the rest of the day for more fine community radio programming here on KFUG and shameless self-promotion. Full Logic Reverse is moving from Friday mornings to Tuesday mornings. So join me tomorrow for 3 hours of killer morning maniac music on your community radio station, KFUG, Crescent City.